So roll call wise, Bon Secours, Catskill Regional, Good Sam.
You have to verbalize for me, Dr. Mal.
Yes, okay.
Yes, I'm
After
here.
all this time, really?
Hudson Valley, Health Alliance, Northern Duchess. We should allow proxy voting. That would, we could get our numbers up. Nyack Hospital. Will. Orange, the Rome Tree. Putnam.
Here.
St. Anthony. St. Hudson. St. Luke's. Sharon. Vassar. Westchester Medical Center. And the REMAC liaison from Westchester.
Present.
Alrighty. Review the minutes. Everybody reviewed them prior to coming, I'm sure.
I did. They look good.
Alright. Old business, BLS protocol update.
So it is my understanding that the survey or solicitation of information has closed. There is currently a statewide BLS tag committee meeting being scheduled. I don't think the dates have been picked yet, but they say that they are on course for, hopefully for January. Lots of comments were received.
Yeah, Mike, don't they have a conference call scheduled for Wednesday afternoon?
I don't know when, I saw the doodle poll, but I haven't seen the results of that.
Yeah, sometime Wednesday afternoon. That's it. It started like 12 o'clock, went to 6 o'clock for the option, but sometime the 21st.
And the goal is a release in January?
For adoption at the state at the January meeting was the initial plan, with rollout after that sometime.
Alright, service upgrades.
We have several agencies that are applying for BLS glucometry: Fairview Fire, Modena Fire, and Alamo. For BLS 12-lead, Ramapo and Alamo. BLS CPAP, Ramapo and Alamo. And Alamo for Narcan and Albuterol.
Those have to be voted on, so I don't know.
Yeah. Postpone for 1 month or till the next meeting.
Sorry.
Oh, yay!
Nobody more excited than...
You are mid-sentence.
All right.
You're hired in open meeting.
What'd you do so far?
We're halfway through.
Serious? It's
You
9.
miss a you.
9:38.
We run an efficient ship here.
Oh my goodness.
We're at service upgrades. We don't have a quorum.
Oh, okay.
We're
All right.
short.
I don't
Although we're
think we.
close. We're one,
We're
just need
way
one more
short on the
purple.
quorum, yeah.
One more person.
Rosie's here. Well, that's a bummer. Okay. So where are you, silly guy?
Here's the attendance.
Okay.
Literally, we are.
Okay.
We just talked about the BLS protocol update,
Okay.
which is
Okay,
apparently
so-
on track for January,
Yeah.
and then service upgrades.
Okay, so the new service upgrades are, we've received preliminary stuff from one and a discussion from another to start the whole process. So the first is Village of New Square EMS, and they would like to go to an ALS upgrade. That's the one you have most of the paperwork on, correct?
Actually, we have received health questions.
Oh, they
also,
did? All right, so-
And they're like 99% ready to.
So, okay, so then people are moving fast.
Yes.
So what we have to do, the next step is, the office goes over, reviews all that the information is there and that it's a complete packet. And then we put together a tag committee to review each one of the applications, all of its components and everything with them. And then we have a 30-day public opinion, what's the word? Not public opinion.
Comment period.
Comment period, thank you. So next step, we
have
can
to
ask.
create the tag.
Yeah, if we could ask people that are interested or involved, would like to be on part of the tag, please let Bill know. And we don't need to take time now to do it. This is going to be a record meeting.
I'm not that efficient.
You are efficient. So, and the second one is the Vassar Brothers utilizing Alamo certificate. So, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Okay, well, we can. They've Alamo, well, HealthQuest has submitted a request to have Alamo upgraded to ALS for an interfacility transports in their area of operation. So their intent at this point, according to the documentation, is to put an ambulance that will be an ALS ambulance, be able to transport between facilities, and it will be an ALS ambulance that they're looking for. And at this point, it just says one ambulance. I don't know, where we're going for it. Dr. Arshad is going to be the medical director. The certificate has been valid and, been kept valid over the years by submitting PCRs. And it's going to be staffed by Northern Dutchess paramedics at this point. That's what we have in the paperwork.
Okay,
I don't know
so.
if you want to ask either.
Yeah, so very straightforward. This is part of our Mission Lifeline program, just because we are the receiving facility for multiple critically ill and injured patients. A single ambulance to go from Ellenville to Vassar Brothers Hospital to transport critically ill and injured patients in the disciplines of trauma, cardiac, and stroke.
Okay. So we'll look forward to two tags. We could actually, if we're tight, we could do both. One tag could do both.
Sure.
But either way, and is someone here from Village of New Square who wants to make a few comments?
I don't know who that is.
Can you just identify yourself, sir? I'm sorry.
Yes, my name is David Brewer.
I'm sorry, spell your last name for me, sir.
D-R-E-U-E-R.
Thank you.
I'm EMS Director for the Village EMS, and if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Great. Thank you so much. So everyone, if you could submit names for being part of the tag, that would be very helpful, and we'll move forward with both applications.
We would like to have at least one REMAC physician on the tag and several ALS services representatives.
Yes, you have to have kind of a smattering of complexity of our group so that we represent all the aspects of our group. So we can definitely get people to be on there. Okay, evaluation subcommittee report.
So we have no cases to review, but there is some additional commentary from the last meeting, if I may. So while we were focused on the medical aspects of the case review, there were some concerns from the county regarding the delay in dispatch. We had an opportunity to meet with the county, and we just wanted to reiterate after clarifying that there was not an issue in regards to the dispatch, specifically in regards to any change in the platform or upgrades related to that affected this particular case and the response related to the case. I had an opportunity to also discuss the case with a private ALS agency that had responded, and again, they maintained there was an issue related to geocoding, but there was no significant change in regards to the EMD or dispatch information that was sent to the responding crew.
Okay, great. Thank you. Come, have a seat. Ryan, have a seat, please.
Sorry for being run a little late this morning.
That's okay. You only just beat me. So I look good to you, but you're the only one in the room. Introduce yourselves so people can understand who you are, and it's okay. It's a good part of the meeting to do.
Good morning. My name is Ryan Greenberg. I am the new director of the Bureau of EMS and Trauma Systems, also referred to as the new Lou Burns. Well, it's still about now. Starting to be less of that. And just excited to be here, learn a little bit more about what's going on up in this region. And I apologize for running a little bit late. a little bit longer than I thought to get up into this region. So timing-wise, didn't account for some of the things I got stuck behind in the process. But,
So Ryan's been going around all throughout the state to just do information gathering, talk to people, access each one of the regions just to, have some face-to-face time and gather some information. So please, if you'd like to meet with Ryan and, get kind of a gist. Do you have anything you'd like to report from the department that you'd like to disseminate down in terms of information?
So I think the biggest one, just kind of on that part of the listening tour, which is what it's been called, is just trying to find out, there's obviously there's many different parts of New York, each which have its own components to it, and what's our struggles, and what's working well, and what isn't. And in many cases, some really good best practices. So part of this listening tour is really going to find out, what's working really well, what do you have in trouble with, what can I help with, we help with even trying to work with some of that. And I would say some of the best stuff that's come out of this listening tour is actually just been sharing ideas. Oh, you're having this problem? Hold on, they're having the same problem in Buffalo, and here's how they solved it. Or they're having the same problem in Suffolk County, and here's how they solved it. So just kind of gathering some of that knowledge. So please, by all means, steal my ear, either during the meeting or after the meeting, and tell me what you're thinking. Tell me, what your wish list is. If you got to change something in EMS, what would it be? And literally throw out anything. I've heard it all, but I want to hear it again, because the more repetitive stuff that comes out, the more likely that moves to the top of the line. Some people have looked at me and said, well, this will never change, it will never happen. Well, if we don't talk about it, we don't try it, then it's really never going to change. And so that's a big component of getting out here. And I also just want to say thank you. Thank you for being here and putting time in. I know our schedules and our lives are really busy, particularly on a REMAC side of things. So thank you for putting the time and the effort into being here, and let me know how I can help you today.
Thanks, Ryan, and thanks for coming. Helicopter committee report, I assume is not going to be Berkowitz anymore.
There's not that I do not know of any helicopter meeting that's gone on for quite a while.
Okay.
And it won't be Berkowitz.
Yeah, right.
Do you know who they named?
One subtle of the
There is a doc who has been put in to fill Dr. Berkowitz's place. I have not met her.
Is it Tina? I mean, Westchester, but
Westchester.
for the helicopter.
Oh, in terms of helicopter, I don't know who's going to head that up. Yeah.
I do have some information on the helicopter that I get from Hackensack when they come into our area, and it's just kind of a small amount of information, but they had a total request, and this is for the month of September. They had a total request of 31 requests for the helicopter, and they completed 6 missions out of that. And the way they break it down to me is by the requesting county. So they had 15 requests from Orange County, 2 from Dutchess, 4 from Sullivan, 4 from Rockland, and 2 from Ulster, and 4 from Putnam. They transported 5 adults and 1 pediatric. 2 of them were from the scene, and 4 of them were into facility.
This is Hackensack, right?
This
It's
is
not the overall
Hackensack.
data.
Right.
Because
It's
our
not the-
main helicopter is
Right.
listed there.
I've been trying to get the same information from them, and they're just not cooperating too easily.
Who's your main person? Who's your main helicopter?
Like
at Airman?
Air Methods, yeah.
I'm sorry, who?
Air Methods.
And they just haven't been responsive, or?
Yeah, I've requested 2 or 3 times to do it, and I talked to the guy at Hackensack because they're associated with them also, and he was gonna talk to them about how he does his format and send it to us, but we have not received that.
It also may be a problem with the transition of Dr. Berkowitz not being there anymore.
It could be.
Because we used to get regular reports and such, so.
And they're a pretty friendly bunch, actually.
Yeah.
As far as, so I think it's just a matter of getting the data.
Yeah.
I don't think they would withhold it for any reason.
Bill, do we need to be more active in doing something with this committee? I mean, certainly, it sounds like all of a sudden now there's a huge void with Dr. Berkowitz gone, and maybe some opportunities. I know that it's a Hudson Valley and Westchester collaborative effort, But do we maybe just need to take a little bit more of a lead so that we can
Sure.
stay up on the information? And I mean, I think that's important.
Yeah, I think knowing when they're coming in and, where the calls are and stuff are very important. And,
So do we have members of a helicopter committee in addition to Dr. Berkowitz at the regional level?
Not at this point.
So then maybe that's something that we should look at,
I mean,
reigniting.
I am, but we haven't had any meetings.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I mean,
Dropped off
and,
the
I mean,
list.
you may be, I mean, maybe
Yeah.
we should appoint Dr. Larson as our chairman from this region and get him some committee
Welcome.
members. I mean, well, you
You
come
should,
down-
Schedule
you
you
shouldn't
out.
have raised your hand.
Other people, by giving other people committee duties.
Yeah, that's off record, that's off record.
So, but maybe we need some ALS, and other representation on the helicopter committee. I think that would be appropriate.
All right, thank you. RTAC, was there a meeting?
No, there was no meeting
Okay.
since last
It's not, yeah, right? There's
I
been,
haven't
there's been no meeting, we had, this body met.
October.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah.
Do you know when the next one is, roughly?
It has not been scheduled, I don't think.
Okay,
It should be right before right after the
it's right after
staff meeting.
CMAC and STAC,
STAC.
and then RTAC,
Right.
right? I think it goes in that order. Okay, quality improvement report, Jeff.
Progress continues on the transition to NEMSIS 3.4. Had pretty good success bringing image trend agencies on board, working on ESO agencies at this point. It's a time-consuming process, and we are constantly going over the validation rules to make sure everything works. And we have had some issues with validation scores. We've gone back and rules, fixed those. State rules as well as the local rules that we have built in. Towards that, we did look at inflation for the last almost 2 years with our ESO regional bridge, and found that overall there's a 68% first pass success rate with that. So it's not great, but it's not as bad as some of the other areas that I have looked at across the U.S. But there's still some work to be done with that. And of course, that doesn't include agencies that are not on ESO, but we do have a fair amount of ALS agencies, including all but one of our RSI agencies. And RSI agencies that I've been able to look at actually have 100% on first attempt, so no issues with that. IM Narcan, at this point in time, we have distributed just over 1,550 doses of Narcan for agencies, which is about 500 more than we did last year at this time. The problem's not going away.
No, it's only getting worse. Did anybody see the expose on 60 Minutes last night? Boy, they ripped into the guys that make the Narcan, the talking one, I forget the name. Yeah, there's a word for their system, though. It's the Kaleo pharmaceutical company. And they just laid into them about the price gouging, So it was very interesting. They had interviewed a pediatrician, an ED pediatrician, who, in Salt Lake City. Who would think Salt Lake City, but it's like a huge, huge problem. And she and her staff go around and hand out bags with a vial of Narcan and 2 syringes in them to anyone who wants it. And they walk around all the neighborhoods, of course the bad neighborhoods, and so they showed, people resuscitating patients, and what they did was do a live one so that the American public could see it. But the problem I had, it was a cop doing nasal Narcan, which he administered correctly. He had the woman handcuffed in the back of the seat of the car like this, and he's through the window giving her the Narcan. I'm like, oh my God, what a position to be in. What if you had to do something for her? You have her handcuffed.
All he did is just pushed it and just stood there and waited for it. Didn't do any respirations after.
No, but did you, initially you couldn't really tell she was handcuffed until she came around and I'm like, oh, she's handcuffed. Oh. No, she was in a blue fancy dress.
Oh, maybe she was a prisoner first.
What am I going to do with you? It was pretty, so it's good that the American public are going to see these things. And they interviewed a family, you know how they're trying to get Narcan into family members' hands, so they went through the whole process. Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Okay.
Can I just touch on quality for a second?
Sure.
So something that you watched the CMAC some ago last time, I spoke briefly about it. We are working towards putting together some statewide quality metrics, preferably 5 or 6 of them. So we're working on gathering what people are looking at today around the state. We're going to bring probably 15 to 20 of those to the state, to the CMAC, and then ask the CMAC to pick. We're asking them to pick 5. They can't decide on 5, and they really want 6. That's fine. But it's all coming from around the state and different things. So if there is particular performance metrics that you're watching here, I can be happy to send anybody here a link to SurveyMonkey. Put it in there, and then we're going to kind of gather that. We're seeing a lot of, obviously, duplicate things, similar regions. But similar to what you turned and said, well, we're looking to see how we compare nationally. We're trying to get it to say, well, let's look at how we're doing statewide. With the goal also being to allow people to look at agencies that are similar size to them, in similar regions to them, and similar things. It eventually won't, say agency names or things like that. It will be more regionalized. But just begin at time to get towards those benchmarks. And part of that initiative is coming from a lot of agencies turning, when we ask them, and when we're doing full service inspections and things like that, well, what are you looking at quality? And they turn and say, well, we make sure that we have signatures and that we have full set vitals. And they say, well, we'd like to look at more, but we're not sure what we're supposed to be looking at. And so part of this initiative moving forward is to look at it from, to help people look at, hey, here's some things that's going on statewide and what physicians, I say clinically, this is, what can really make a difference in patient outcomes and things like that. So,
what are some of the indicators that other folks are looking at?
On the bigger side of things, you're seeing a lot of things, obviously, strokes and STEMIs. Interestingly enough, that first 12 lead is becoming more and more a big one, and so it's not just like, oh my God, the biggest intervention we can do, but it's, that time of, are we taking 20 minutes or are we taking 10 minutes? And so you're seeing probably some of the biggest differences from the quick talks that I've been talking to on that one. Looking at intubation, looking at some other things that, some of them are interesting, RMAs and who's staying home. The newest one being interesting, ironically, with Narcan. Now, if you administer Narcan, the clinician would say, thank you very much, I don't want to go with you. And the EMS providers go, what do I do? How is that being handled and things like that. So it's just some of the parameters around what we plan to look at or what we'd like to look at is it has to be able to be measured through an PCR platform if you recognize it.
I'm sorry, you have to say that again, Ryan. It has to be able to be measured through what?
An EPCR platform, so electronic jargon. So because we recognize that if we're looking at 3 million reports a year, that the ability to do that manually is just not there. And so, it has to be electronic. It has to be something that, we feel really has positive patient outcomes, and something that's being measured in more than one region so that we can, work experimental.
I hope the first one you talked about, those signatures and the form completed, was a voluntary agency?
No, that's often across the board. And it truly is, and it's not out of anything else that's sort of, well, I was told that this has to be on there, or they're just not sure what to look at. Or in some cases, it's a voluntary agency because they turn and say, well, I just got elected to this position last week.
Yeah, that would make more sense to me, not a paid agency saying that was their QA project, I hope.
If I might volunteer one as well?
Yeah.
Again, the question being is, can we abstract this information from an EPCR for cardiac arrest if there's a way to measure overall CCF or chest compression fraction? And we know in high-performance CPR, time on the chest and minimizing delays is what improves ultimately outcomes and intact neurologic survival. So with the recent AHA guidelines, they recommended a CCF of greater than 80%. And I think it's something, if we can abstract from the data, would be remarkable to help set up very high standard for high performance CPR.
Is it 80 or 60%? So 60, and we could possibly get up as high as 80%.
Yes, the ultimate goal is 80% of the correct time.
I think the problem we'd have today with it is, the equipment to actually measure it and know that that's going on. I think it's the right thing, and it's what we should be doing from that educational point of view, the hands-on, and getting people to think outside the box. And it's not till probably a year or two ago where my medical director turned to me and said, great, when you go to intubate on cardiac arrest, don't stop compressions. I've been doing this quite a while, and just the thought process was, and to be honest, the newer paramedics looked at it and they're like, okay, no problem, because it's all they knew. It was, oh yeah, keep going. To me, I'm saying, okay, stop. So, it's just, so the question would be, how can we measure it? And if you have ways to look at it, we're happy.
Next question. What percentage, I mean, we're always faced with this regionally, but I'm wondering the rest of the state, what percentage of agencies are fully EPCR?
It's an excellent question. And so there's two ways that you need to look at it statewide. So statewide, 50% of our agencies are electronic.
Oh, we're good.
However, statewide, about 85 to 90%, depends on the year, of our charts are done electronically. So we do about 3.5 million requests for service a year, and of that 3.5 million requests for service a year, between 2.8 and 3 million coming electronically. Obviously, the biggest one's coming from New York City. So we actually look in our office, a map, and I'm happy to show anybody who wants to look at the map out there, of the state, and we put any agency that's covered, or that's electronic in green, and we put any agency that's not electronic or showing on paper in blue. And part of it is this initiative that we hope to roll out in the future of how do we turn the state green, both from an environmentally thing and also from a clinical point of view. The problem is that you look at certain areas and they're either very, very green or really big pockets of blue. So it's tough. There's no question that the data that we collect today gets a good picture of what's going on in New York, but it definitely doesn't represent all of New York, because there's some pretty significant pockets. With one of the biggest pockets being Long Island. Long Island is tremendously still done on paper.
We always like to make fun of Long Island. They're far enough away, we can...
Well, just so that we don't have any illusion about the green part. I mean, what's happening, at least in our area, is that, okay, so folks are cranking out a electronic PCR in Westchester County. Everyone's doing that. And then what they're doing is they're making a paper copy of it, and they're faxing it to us. Or they're sending it electronically to us, and it's being faxed in our emergency departments, and then it's being photographed and put into the medical record, essentially, into the patient's hospital medical record. So there is at least one thing of paper being done there, and probably two. So anyway, whatever. It's just a side, but that's what's, because there is no, right now, there is no way to have the electronic medical record or a paper record go directly in electronically to the hospital's electronic medical record.
There's a way.
It's actually one of the things that
So, I've
It
been
exists.
working on that for 6 years probably, or more. And we're at that point, thank you so for sending your letter out to the hospitals.
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah.
Because that was a huge piece.
Yeah.
And, the hospitals are starting to sort of realize
That was outside
that
for them to
the
pick up.
EMS community is an agent that they can share information with. And there's a number of platforms that do transmit stuff into the hospital platforms electronically. One of them is the HDE program, CSO, that we've been working with the region to try and get into locally, all of the hospitals here, so that whenever a record gets done, it goes electronically as a PDF into the actual patient's chart. And then the information comes back out that the hospital allows the EMS providers to have, so that we can see from even a QA perspective individually per call, hey, this back pain I brought in was actually not, it was something else, or the MI was actually, whatever, it wasn't MI, any of those kinds of things. Plus it meets the guidelines for the HA, the information back out, patient lifeline, trauma stuff, all those kinds of things. So there is something out there, but it's just We have been battling the legal side of the hospitals for a long time.
So that
I think
letter's
it's starting to
useful.
finally come around a little bit.
Yeah.
But that was a huge help for all of us in doing that. Thank you.
And if anybody didn't get that letter, it's posted up on the website as well. And
It-
basically what
It's out front too for people to grab.
You bet.
If I may add to that, to Dave's conversation, the HTE platform allows for the PCR to appear at the bedside in your platform, as long as it's completed within the time that the patient is still there. That's the only fuzzy math part of it. But you would be able to see the full chart from EMS, why you're at the patient's bedside or in your quark in this platform.
At the moment, I believe ESO is the only platform that takes every other electronic version of PCR, converts it to the HL7 code that the
I'm sorry,
hospital
Dave,
uses.
converts it to what?
HL7 code that the hospital uses for any of their variety of platforms.
So there is one other thing that you haven't heard of it already called Hospital Hub, which is a state project that's been working on. It's actually started from the Stroke Initiative, and it's an electronic way of transferring charts to the hospital. The hospital would have a login to it. There's definitely been some speed bumps to it, but it's getting better. So trying to avoid that faxing situation, but it is also dependent on crew finishing their call. Then you'd be able to log in and download it and upload it. The ultimate goal, hopefully, of this letter that went out, there are several goals to it, but one of the initiatives of this goal, of the letter going out there, is also to help in regards to the shinings and the different exchanges. There is a little bit of a roadblock right now. You have to have permission before, literally sign off from every patient before that can move through the shining. And unless there's some exceptions to that, and we're hoping that the quality metrics in this will allow some of those exceptions to allow it to move. If that does, there is a mechanism for more charts to be able to go to more hospital systems. Today, there's a legal restriction to it, not a, well, there's a legal restriction to it. So
Yeah.
we're working through that.
So, Ryan, if I could inquire further, Bill introduced the concept of Hospital Hub at our last meeting. And is that an initiative that's only available in certain regions? Because we tried to do some investigation into whether we would be eligible as a hospital to participate in that, and I was told it's only certain regions, so it's a limited pilot.
So it's a pilot program right now in certain regions, and then depending on how that goes, depends on how it's spread out. I'm happy to put you in touch with the person who's coordinating it in our office, who can talk more about it.
Besides the fact of just the exchange of information, three things come to my mind. One is QA. How can we do decent QA in any shape or form without having an electronical place where we can take all the information out of? So that's huge. And two, I know of 2 cases I've reviewed from a medical legal standpoint where the EMS record was part of the challenge of this case. And they kept harping on this ED doc. Did you review the EMS record while the patient was in the ED? And it was just this barrage of points, that the plaintiff's attorney was going at this poor ED doc about. So it's an issue both from a communication perspective, the continuity of care, and from a risk management perspective. It's a real medical legal issue.
Now, would that ePCR be pushed to both the hospital hub and to the hospital simultaneously, or we're looking at, basically developing a central database with hospital hub?
So Hospital Hub essentially will take electronic patient care reports from multiple different vendors, pushes into Hospital Hub, and then Hospital Hub is one direct to the hospital. So it sounds like similar to what you're doing with DSO in the region, it's just in other regions. And DSO is truly accepting any electronic charting system.
And is Hospital Hub an independent state vendor, or is it part of the Commerce website?
It's part of Image Trend.
It's part of what?
It's part of Image Trends, which is what our data repository is.
One nuanced flip side from the medical director perspective is we have such incredible crews locally in the Hudson Valley that it also gives you an opportunity to acknowledge exemplary care. To say, hey, you did a fantastic job. Right? Your commitment to excellence really made a difference in this patient's care and outcome. So I think, recognizing the hard work of our EMS professionals in the Hudson Valley is also one of our overarching goals.
Okay, thanks. We have no PAD, EpiPen, albuterol glucometer, or Narcan programs put through. Protocol committee.
We did that earlier, but we don't have a quorum.
Okay, Mike.
Thank you. We have the protocol committee has met twice recently. We have 2 new protocol committee members, Andy Tarasoff from New Windsor and Israel Knobloch from Curious Joel. We welcome them to the committee to start assisting us in that process. We still have 3 open items that we're going to continue to discuss. One is the use of bougies, which, and I don't know, do you want to expand on that at this point? But generally, it's well received and certainly looking at moving forward with that. PEEP, and then the restocking agreements at a regional level. So we're going to continue to meet, and obviously none of this stuff will happen overnight. So, yeah. Also, maybe coming into discussion as of this morning might be SUC and ROC, a review in how it's used in the RSI protocol. So we may start looking at that as well.
I'm sorry, Mike, what is SUC and ROC?
Succinylcholine.
Is it an acronym?
Succinylcholine.
But is it,
Medications.
okay,
Medication.
gotcha.
He's being avant-garde.
I'll spell them for you
That's
later.
all right, go ahead. Sorry, I have to interrupt you.
That's fine.
I can figure out what you were saying.
It took me a little while.
So we will continue to look at those. And then the other thing that Bill and I have been working with Ryan on is possibly getting him down here for a listening tour in the region. Certainly when we learned that he was coming today, we just put it on hold to see if there was further need for him to come down or if he was going to get a good flavor of what some of the issues are. So maybe if we can have an open forum following the regular agenda, we can see if some of the topics have been addressed, and then we said that we would discuss whether or not we wanted to open it up to other EMS folks and leaders and have them come down. One of the dates that we're tentatively looking at is Thursday, December 13th. So after we have some more discussion with him today, we can make that decision. And that's all I have.
Do we want to talk, I mean, we don't have a quorum to vote, but just about those items that we were discussing? I mean,
Sure.
the issue was really, at the previous meeting, we talked about bougies and just, whether to mandate equipment or make it, available if we have it, if stocked by the ambulance. And I think that was the consensus of the meeting that we had. If anybody has any thoughts, feelings?
Well, I think bougies are pretty cheap.
It's $1.20.
Yeah, but it's more so, I think, with the bougie is the educational piece to go with it. That's what we were talking more about, is be a great podcast, and it would be probably a great video to, utilize the bougies and people to see them, because I think that's the only part with that. And then the peak valve, right?
Just, I'm still on the bougies. There is a video on the bougies from the last training that we did at Laerdal from the protocol rollout. So that link would still be available on the regional website. So if anybody wants to look at that, that is there. And I forget if you did that or if Dr. Fulligar did that, but
It's on YouTube. I think it was, we encased the education within an actual clinical scenario, and then we honed in on the actual application, quote unquote, railroading the 2 best practices, when to employ that, and things like this.
And so I think just like with any kind of process improvement and things we're doing to introduce into the area, we need to make sure people are comfortable with it, and some format of, are the medical directors going to, review the process with their agencies and such. So something we have to look at. But I think, there's no question the alternative methodology should be there, along with what we described as the PEEP valve and such. And restocking will never go away, just like medication shortages will never go away. Okay, anything else from protocol? That's it.
that's it. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you for joining the committee, guys. New business, active shooter. Is that for the Middletown High School? Okay, so I wasn't sure if that was my name next or is that CMAC. So there was an Orange County-wide active shooter program we did at Middletown High School 2 weeks ago now, I think. It came off very well. I think one of the things that with all of these processes, you know, you learn what we need to do, you learn where we have problems, and you learn things that don't work. So Mobile Life and one other agency are trying to work together to form a tactical team. And so I know, Arshad, you're very involved in all this stuff. This was the first introduction of that process and such. And so I thought it went really, really well. The involvement was widespread. I mean, I couldn't believe how many people were involved, but it went off quite well. It was something that, you know, we all say it's probably more when rather than if. So it was a great procedure and process improvement kind of issue for all of us. And the Orange County EMS agent office, you know, brought forward all of their equipment, and the information was, you know, disseminated out. They had a nice debriefing afterwards. And so, and especially for the Middletown High School staff, they were really involved. They were really quite helpful and really into it. So I think, you know, we have to realize that these people know it's a real entity, and it's an issue we need to propagate forward. CMAC.
Hey, real quick.
Yeah.
Mike and I were just talking over here. We've done something very similar in Dutchess County. We have 6 organizations working together to do just that in terms of that kind of group. And we were thinking that it's probably a good idea that at a regional level, and then perhaps even at a state level, we talked about some standardization with that kind of idea of when EMS implements how, that sort of thing. There's a lot of really good stuff that's come out from out west, with tailored exposures for tactical EMS components, and warm zone environment operations. I know at Arlington and LaGrange and Fairview, we've implemented those strategies already. So it would be something good to perhaps look at regionally and then at a statewide level as well.
Rockland County did something similar. What we did, we took some of the Homeland Security funds and we purchased hemorrhage bags for the force. If they get people trained to stop the feed, instructor level, they can go out back out to the community. They're issued the bags, 2 per agency, and we're trying to do more right now. We also work with the police academy, and every other week when they do the officer training, the second day they invite EMS people in to actively train with the response task force, so that we're familiar, because they have a task force with EMS on it, so that way it's training people in the agencies.
Yeah, I noticed on the side of the Orange County, you know, the big van they bring, it was from Homeland Security funds.
There's a lot of funding out there.
Yeah.
Make sure you hit the deliverables, and that happens to be one of the deliverables.
Yeah, that's where that money came from.
Just to go back for 1 second, the EPCR, what we did was the health department received a grant for $80,000 for opioid, and one of the deliverables that were potentially involved in it were EMS being upgraded for EPCR. So we identified the last 2 agencies, volunteer agencies that don't have the EPCR, and we're going to be bringing them up to speed and putting them on EPCR with that grant, in addition to supplementing our ALS provider to a little bit. We can't cover the whole amount. So if you have that money floating around, I mean, it seems to be hard to hit the targets of what it's required for. The PCR is one of the very big targets that's on it.
That's really good news.
So they've recognized from an EPCR platform or from electronic charting that EMS is some of the fastest, most accurate data that comes in relation to the opioid crisis, in determining where problems are and different things like that. So actually, by the end of this year, there should be the release of the annual opioid report that comes out from the state. If you get a chance to read it, it's actually quite interesting. I've seen draft copies so far, but you will see that a lot of different data points that come from EMS and EMS data that's collected. So the reason that part of what is being brought up and why that's allowed to be used in that the more agencies that are electronic, the better picture that we have. And not only the better picture globally on an annual basis, but the better picture even on an emergent basis of where the problems are, and be able to look at it from that front.
To recognize some of the exemplary work that you guys have done, in my experience, the programs that do the best are those that have strong multi-agency training and response. So if there's an opportunity for us to, spread some influence at the statewide level for all of public safety, and that's, the active training of fire, police, and EMS that come together for these critical incidents, and just to start to change the cultural norms. It's a hot zone, you're going to stage 1.5 miles away, wait for us to respond. There's an opportunity, depending on each individual municipality and locality, that, if we have strong, cohesive, multi-interagency operations, people know each other's names and faces, that when calamity strikes, there's really an opportunity for us to save more lives. And working together and getting all of those different agencies to work together, I think, as it trickles down to the local level, it's going to have a tremendous effect and ultimate patient care.
And in fact, Ryan, I don't know, are you familiar with the FBI's video, The Coming Storm? Okay, so I would suggest that you reach out to your partners at the FBI. They have an outstanding video, which is The Coming Storm, and it is exactly what Dr. Arshad is speaking about. In fact, when we first started looking at Rescue Task Force and responding to these incidents, that was really the video that just convinced us that that's what we needed to do. It's a simulated event in West Virginia, but also brought in experts from the LA airport shooting, and you have to see it, and we need to get it out to everybody, to fire, police, and EMS. It's outstanding.
Is it from a perspective of a training video, or is it like just showing you what happened, what they found they needed, or how does it come up?
It's a video that you walk away from saying that's the interagency and teamwork that we all need to do to respond to these drastic events.
Okay.
It's about coordination, it's about sharing resources, it's about nobody stepping on anybody, but a cooperative effort to accomplish the task which needs to be done. It's truly outstanding.
So it really shows the collaboration of
absolutely
all the different agencies,
disciplines.
disciplines working together.
Yeah. And I know when I spoke to the FBI agent in Washington D.C. when I initially called, he was a Kingston police officer that had gone on to the FBI, and so he was more than willing to do whatever we needed to do. And if you need some additional contact, just reach out to me and I'll get you his information. Thank you.
Along these lines, we did this in Westchester County about a month ago, so it was an all-agency, basically, conference to pull us together. So hopefully, I think we're a little bit better, or a little further along than we were in the past.
Yeah, definitely this event made us look at certain places where the collaboration could be people stepping on toes or not making sure we're providing all the resources across the spectrum. So it worked out really well. It did open a lot of eyes to things that we need. Okay, CMAC. So I'm gonna have to apologize for being brain dead, but what I can tell you a little bit was we discussed quite a bit about the BLS protocols and the revision, but I can't remember anything else. I'm like,
well, I think we reported on that last.
yeah, but he just what he did was talk about just more so the verbiage and how he was changing things, but I couldn't think of anything else.
Yeah, I mean, we have a meeting coming up here within, and you missed it at the beginning. We have a
January 9th?
No, we have a BLS protocol meeting statewide coming up probably next week sometime, or maybe even later this week.
Wednesday, the 21st.
Wednesday. So hopefully
Wednesday
we'll
the
know more
21st?
what the status of the BLS protocol is at that point.
Yeah, they sent out a survey.
Oh, the Survey Monkey. Oh, yeah.
Doodle survey.
Yeah.
It was, the options were any time from noon till 6 o'clock at night, a conference call.
So we'll know, hopefully we'll know more.
Okay, great. So open forum. Just a little notification. I'm sure people in the area had learned, and it's no secret, Orange Regional had to go on trauma diversion because we had to close our ORs for about a week, which, as you can imagine, for a hospital was pretty impressive. Closed all elective surgeries. We found a problem with our major sterilization device, and so we invited the state in, everybody came in, and it was quite an event, but it was the only reason that we had to trauma divert at that time, because we just couldn't open an OR immediately for any kind of cases. Luckily, thank God, that's over. Open forum, the other thing, Dr. Daly, as you know, is the collaborative chair physician from the protocol committee, and what we're doing, he started a process and has one of the people from the Remo area going to go around, and he's going to hook up with one of the gentlemen from Mobile Life, and they're going to go around and educate people on the car seat and pediatric immobilization, and to make sure we're all on the same page about transporting pediatric patients, and that we're transporting them not in parents' laps, and that we use the commercial devices and the car seats that are available. And so there's a nice educational process, which they're going around agency to agency to discuss with people. That's all for me.
Car seats, but putting the car seat in the correct place in the ambulance.
Yes.
That has been a big issue that's come up, is that people are like, well, just put the car seat on the stretcher and we're good. And a lot of the car seats are not rated necessarily to go.
And they have some really great devices out now, that, commercial devices that aren't very expensive, that both for, the infant, but all the way up through an adolescent of small stature. So it is pretty effective as an immobilization device for transport. Any other comments? Open forum.
Well, we need to...
I'll do this.
Well, we need to confirm our meeting for next year, the dates.
Okay. Did everybody get a copy of it?
No, we didn't have that. It was a blank form.
Did Bill, did you get our list from West District?
Yes.
So we don't
And we don't conflict with any of them.
Okay, great.
So these are our suggestions.
Well, we don't want to, absolutely. So if everybody wants to take these down, these are what is the initial suggestion. Monday, January 28th. Monday, March 4th. Monday, June 3rd. Monday, September 9th. And Monday, November 4th. You'll probably attach these to the minutes, right, Kara?
Nope.
No, because the last time you changed the dates.
I know, I'm a pain in the you-know-what. As long as they don't conflict with, we conflicted one with CMAC, we conflicted one with a big holiday. We were like all over the place last time. So let's all take a look at them. The more eyes that look at it, the better off we'll be. Okay, so that was that. Let me just read in one. I have one Department of Health notification. So we have for Juan Rosado out of Flushing, New York. He's suspended for 3 months effective October 30th. The suspension is stayed, and he's placed on a probation of 3 years and assessed a civil penalty for violations of Part 800. That's the only notice I have to read in. Then you all will see that letter outside from Ryan Greenberg and the Department of Health to talk about that information and exchange of information with each of the hospitals, and I hope that everybody brings it forward. I know my executive team has already looked at it at Orange Regional. And lastly, the Department of Health put out a policy statement which is actually very helpful regarding alternative medication formularies and some guidance when we have these pre-hospital drug shortages.
The important part about it, the notice has been out for a while, but it has an expiration date buried in the alternative formulary, and we have a note from the the Bureau of EMS that's saying that it's not an expiration date on the policy, so that those are still added and valid drug formulary substitutions.
And it just shows you kind of the procedures we should be going through from a regional level through an EMS agency level, and just how we can share information and how to find a solution for these problems, because they're, like I said before, they're not going away. David?
So we participate in the VLS epinephrine. It used to be the check and inject, and that's the epinephrine vial for VLS providers.
Well, that was too quick for me too. Used to be the check and inject and what?
Program, and now it's VLS epinephrine using vials for providers. Syringe epinephrine, thank you. And we are running into an issue of availability of epinephrine in vial format, where it ends up being fairly expensive. A box of 25 vials is $350 versus a box of ampules, epinephrine ampules, is about $90. And so we had posed a question to the state about whether we could use the ampules over the vials, and there was a sort of a bit of head scratching going on. And so I think at the state level, the way that it's written is that it is for vial use and not necessarily ampule use in terms of the scope of practice for VLS providers for this particular program in and of itself. We wanted to pose a question as to whether we could put together a program for VLS providers to use the ampules and use the same program. And so I wanted to get people's thoughts here, Doc's thoughts. Perfect time since Frank's here and state guys are here. Maybe this ends up being something for our protocol committee to discuss, but whether there's a viability of EMTs under a particular program to use ampules over vials.
And just meaning that.
Yep.
That is correct.
The challenge that
their
we
fingers.
have, as we discussed it, is that the state bureau policy statement does use the word vial. So that's the challenge that we would need to overcome.
That and the training.
That and the training, right.
The training we
can handle.
The training are very specific to vial. And then, so while you talk about this one, I'll also bring up the fact that Boundtree has also recently had a recall, if you haven't heard about this one already as well, on the syringe check and inject program. So just the syringe that they used to issue literally had markings on it, filled it here for pediatric, filled it here for...
Yeah. And so what happened? Why did they recall it?
We do not know why the recall occurred, but just the syringe was recalled, and they are sending out to every agency who purchased it from them, essentially a 1cc syringe with a regular marking, so a regular 1cc syringe.
Huh.
So the Bureau is working on helping change some of that education. Ironically, that recall doesn't really affect us that much because as far as we're concerned, as we read the policy statement, our policy statement says you would use a 1cc syringe along with a vial of that, right? So, but just recognize that if you do get a phone call from your agency because they just got a recall notice from Boundtree, that's what occurred.
So what do people think around the table about vial versus ampule?
I would just put a slash there, ampule.
So the training difference truly is that if you're using an ampule, you're going to use a filter needle and then remove it and put on a regular ion syringe needle. Yeah. So and then if you're just using the vial, you don't have to change those things out.
Does that add to the cost using the filter needles? Significantly?
Not significant.
Okay.
It's probably more of a significance if somebody's going to snap it and cut their finger, like somebody said.
Pointing out the reality.
Keep in mind, low frequency, not necessarily high risk, but the risk associated with it. So I think part of the Bureau's decision on using a vial is least amount of steps, least amount of...
Yeah, no needle change. That's huge.
And also just in that, how often is the provider actually doing the skill? It's critical at the point that they need it, but how often are they doing it and the risk associated with it?
So I think that's a discussion for protocol committee. All right?
Sure.
Don't have enough on that agenda, add one more thing.
I'd like to try and load the plate for Mike as much as I possibly
I think that's more helpful to keep him out of trouble. Okay. Open forum, anyone else? David, did you have your hand up earlier? Mr. Green.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Grass, sorry.
I did not, but thank you.
I thought you did. Maybe you were just scratching your head or something.
Okay, I've got a few items. So,
Green.
Is there
Green grass.
any idea when the state guidelines around stroke destination and so on, and when, where are we going with that? And is there any set dates?
There are no set dates at this time. They continue to have discussions. They're working on finalizing the regulations from the state level in designations, and then from that, we make determination to the EMS level. So we are part of the communications, we're part of the conversation, but it is nothing set.
Right. So, just for clarification, I'm just not sure. Does a hospital have to go through a certificate of need type process for this, or is basically all they need to do is meet the guidelines as whatever set by one of the four, agencies that's going to certify the stroke center? So it's just simply they have to be certified by one of the agencies, and they can go ahead and declare themselves whatever level they have certified to.
I am not certain, so I don't want to speak on it.
Okay.
But I'd be happy to find out.
Right, because I know there was a certificate of need thing certainly with the PCI centers for heart, and looking over the New York State regulations, I did not see that. It basically said, you got to go through these steps, you got to meet these guidelines by the certifying organizations, and you're good to go, is what I assume. So, I don't know.
Eric, just for information, I went to one of the stroke meetings in Albany, a day-long meeting, and I think one of the discussion was the direction that they were interested in going was selecting one of those accreditation agencies and then using that statewide. So then you would sign in with that accreditation, meet their accreditation requirements, and then use those designations there. So it was a very similar. They were trying to tie it to the trauma process as well.
Right.
But they were talking about just selecting one. Now I don't know if that's changed, but I went. Like I said, I went to a meeting in Albany, and that's where the way they were leaning anyway.
I will say I have not heard anything in regards to the CON process related to it, but I just haven't been looking at that part. You want to handle that portion of it, but again, happy to look
Okay. So anyway, just talking about, so there's been a number of discussions sort of around this intubation thing. So there's been a fairly large study that's come out that basically patients who have out-of-hospital cardiac arrest do worse if they get tubed. So, and it's fairly decent study. It's got its holes, but it's also a large number of patients. So one of the things that we should probably look at in terms of the RSI is, does RSI improve that? Okay, or is RSI just in that same ballpark? So the one thing I don't know about those studies, and I didn't look carefully, is whether patients who were, basically out of hospital cardiac arrest, you're not going to use RSI, so I don't assume that any of those protocols are in there, but I don't know. So basically it just sounds like people got tubed. Then the sort of secondary or corollary is actually, it seems that if you just use a device like a King tube, it was better. And then along the same lines, epinephrine was also been totally called into question. And so I think that we need to start looking at those studies, and hopefully those two things will be on New York State's big list of, or short list of quality measures.
Survey monkey, put in the request.
Okay.
And that's the biggest thing. and we're happy to look at, like I said, we're just gathering what's going on. We'll, narrow it down to about 15 to 20 things and then test it to CMAQ. So not only getting it on the list, but, turning to, your local representatives on CMAQ and pushing for that topic.
On intubation, I think it's about best practices too. Excuse me. I can say for our agency, we have 100% success with intubation. We use Bougie, we have a sim man. We constantly train our providers monthly on intubation and talking through things and prepping patients, and we have really great outcomes.
Mike, you gotta slow down.
Sorry. We also have over 30% success with ROSC and discharges with our agency also. We do about 5,000 calls a year. So I do agree that intubation is a problem, but I think it's about the training of our providers, and they don't do it unless they're on call usually. No one's going to find a sim man and practicing intubation enough, and that's a problem. I think things we've done is we've sent our providers to difficult airway courses. We train on it, we have the sim man, we can change the airway around, we use bougies, we have valves. I think it's about best practices other agencies might want to follow to have better success with intubation, other than saying we're bad at it, let's not do it. But why don't we just fix our providers who aren't doing enough or not training enough at those procedures?
Yeah, I don't think the question is about, the question is not about the success for intubation, it's the outcomes on cardiac arrest patients, and whether or not those patients should be intubated in the field.
But what's the failure a lot of studies were showing was we're spending too much time trying to intubate and not doing compressions.
Exactly, yeah.
But if you can intubate and do compressions as well, you're going to have a better success. So I think there's a lot of variables in that. I think that when you need to study, obviously, why we're spending 5-10 minutes intubating, not doing chest compressions is probably important, and why we're trying to before we do compressions and stuff. So I think that's a lot of variables that makes it providers need to be better trained on what to do, when to do it, when to call it quits, and when to go to the backup. And that's up to the medical directors to review with their agencies. But we've been successful with it, between Andrew and everybody else, looking at every single intubation and saying, listen, you missed the first time, you're not going to get the second time, we're going to go to the backup there.
But are you looking at the success for intubation or the success for the cardiac arrest?
Both. Intubation first pass, but again, obviously, set up procedures, checklists, making sure we're doing things correctly and talking through it. Luckily, we have 2 paramedics on the cardiac arrest.
Okay, too fast. Luckily what?
Luckily, we have multiple medics on the cardiac arrest, where it makes things easier for us. But I think it's a lot of just training with providers where they're only doing it a couple times a year on a cardiac arrest, and maybe having a difficult airway class brought into the region and let providers go these things and learn better procedures.
So you're offering to put together
Sure.
an airway class for people?
We have a sim man, we have the stuff to do it. I would love to let anyone who wants to use our sim man, we got it for free from Laerdal. If you want to use it, try it. I mean, our sim man has broken teeth, that's good. It breaks on that, not on patients. But I think that's really important, is training your providers, not just going to a scene meeting talking about how to intubate, but actually make them intubate somebody and make sure that they're doing this all the time.
Are people familiar with the class he's talking about? Typical airway class? So 2 days for providers, and it really does, it has a very good balance of practical time as well as classroom time. There's other similar classes to it, I just happen to know that one.
Mike, I know that other regions host skills nights where they have their providers come in and meet minimums for the regional level. REMO requires pediatric intubations, pediatric sticks, as well as adult intubations, using the bougie as well. So that may be something that the protocol committee can look at developing here.
Let's refer that to training and ed.
I'm sorry. I was just trying to put more things on Mike.
Yeah, and Mike just phoned Dave in.
Oh,
So, Mike, I think we'll reach out to you, maybe if you guys can do some stuff with the region, that'd be great.
More. So, okay, one of the, coming from Westchester, there's been some push in Westchester for people doing RSI with just one paramedic. So, I mean, I just want to hear what people's feelings about that.
Well, is there data that they do worse?
What?
Is there any data that single paramedic systems have a lower success rate with RSI?
Unfortunately, I don't I don't think it's been looked at in any kind of scientific way, so I don't know. It's just- Everyone who's doing it in the Hudson Valley is doing it with two medics, right?
The whole collaborative.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole
Yes,
collaborative.
Supposed to be the flag.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is,
Right.
it is written.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the second paramedic doesn't have to be RSI credentialed. They can just be, how do we word it?
Trained.
Trained,
Trained.
so that they, can help facilitate the process. I think that this was a big stumbling process in the very beginning that had no wiggle room. I think from around the collaborative audience, it was pretty standard that everybody wanted the two paramedic model, and that was not something to stray from, because originally we didn't have it here in the Hudson Valley, and so we had to change it to be in line with that process. So that was, I'm not sure how much they're going to want to wiggle on that one.
Yes. Was there some discussion about switching from acetylcholine to rock as the first line? Did that, because I heard something
Well-
like Empress has switched,
Well, there was, but it was because of shortages.
but there was no clinical reason for it.
No, there was no
Okay.
clinical reason, but it was because of shortages, and we felt since it was in the formulary that we would just substitute.
Any other comments?
Two quick things that didn't present before, but when you spoke about the pediatric car seats and things like that, we just recently got a grant in regards to pediatric emergency care coordinators for agencies. This is through our EMS Emerging Children's program, and essentially they're working on coming up with some best practices for agencies to comply with, that they would have one person who's designated as the pediatric coordinator, and then they'd have a series of best practices that they would work to do within their agency, fairly realistic things, like make sure you do one pediatric training a year, know how you're going to transport a patient and have a policy on it, and by the way, on mom's lap doesn't count. A couple things, so that's going on right now as a statewide project to come up with what those best practices or guidelines would be. And then within the region, if you can encourage your agencies to have a pediatric coordinator, that'd be great. If you want more information on that, I'm happy to put you in touch with Martha, who oversees our EMS for Children's program. We also just got a grant for leadership training, so we are working over the next year to develop some EMS leadership training. I've heard a lot on the listening tour, a lack of opportunities for training. When you get elected or move up or given the gold badge or whatever it is, and then they say, good luck, we'll let you know when you mess up, but we don't necessarily do a great job of providing that initial training. So we got grants on that one, and we'll be working on some initial training for new leaders as they come up. And the third one is we have another opioid grant that's coming up that we're working on. We'll hopefully have more information on it in the near future, but that would be additional training for providers on how best to handle some of those situations and how to handle some of the newer situations that we're dealing with now, such as we administer Narcan and then they turn and say, like our diabetics who have been there for years and turn and say, thank you very much, I don't want to go to the hospital. And then how do you handle that so that there's a hopefully positive patient outcome, both at that immediate time and on more long-term time.
We're kind of struggling with that question right now in the collaborative protocols, and what's the best way to handle it, because it's a real issue. And I can say I had to write a judgment summary for the hospital for a case of a family that was suing on a kid that, they reversed, he refused to be seen, and, that night died of an overdose. It was thrown out, but it was just something to think about, that these issues are there. And it's a dilemma, what do you do? And it's a thing of, that's something that I don't know who has the answer to, of what's the right thing to do. But I think if somebody has capacity, you have to allow them to make a decision for themselves, as long as you feel they have the capacity to make that decision.
I think part of, kind of where this is coming from becoming more of an issue, obviously the opioid crisis is becoming more of an issue, which is raising the concern. But in addition to that, as we have more and more BLS providers with here's administration, we give exactly this amount, we go, and it's much more likely to wake them up to a point where they are fully clairvoyanted and sometimes agitated to the point where they really don't want to go anywhere. it's become more of that issue. I think that, the point that it was just at the ALS level, it was about, how do I bring them up to their, their weight, but breathing, where we don't have to maintain respirations. And so we didn't see that, dynamic. The other thing that's happening is...
Not to the point where they can talk to us.
That's it. And I think that, that change in dynamic also happens is, it's now where that the point of the administration and waking up is happening in the home. Where before maybe it was they were out in the stretcher, or there was someplace where, maybe if they were sitting on the fence, it was a little bit easier for them to turn and say, all right, I'll go for that. So part of this training and part of this is to actually help in that, in not only that decision side, but, follow up and on different levels.
Okay. Anything else?
Has there been any updates on the transport of patients with blood and blood products?
That's still, a process that, you can apply for, go through the application process. The one problem, I think, has been really the hospital side of it and the comfort level and that integration of the two, because they have to really, that blood bank and laboratory division chief, whoever it is, whether it be a pathologist or whatever, they have to sign on to that process, so it's not changed since the last discussion we have.
The thing that I've dumped in is then legal gets involved because it's an agreement.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm stuck. I have 3 agencies that are either in the process or have accreditation already, but the process is mired down because legal wants to go through the agreements and make sure that everything matches up to them.
Oh, yeah, it's not easy by any means.
And on that front, just so you understand, the process is much better than what it used to be. It has not changed, and the regulations have not changed, so there was some miscommunication, I think, from people watching the CMAC. They voted on a moratorium. That was them voting on wording to a letter they were writing to the commissioner. It was not them voting that there is another target. There was some confusion on that one. Nothing has changed in regards to regulations at this time at the state level. But I do encourage everyone that, if they feel there's an issue with it or, within their hospital and stuff like that, to address it with the appropriate parties so that it is not forgotten about, although I think it'd be hard to get forgotten about. We have about 24 agencies out of 1,200 that are currently ATS certified. And there are no flight programs today that are ATS certified, just to give you a snapshot of what that looks like. It is something that we are working with, but those regulations are not under us. They're under a separate section, and so we are trying to work within that.
And the 2 women that came to the CMAC will never come back.
They were actually very positive when they walked out. They speak to that.
After the therapy.
If you don't know what we're talking about, just go watch 5 minutes in the CMAC. Be very clear.
They're going to come with flak jackets
right.
next
time. I
time.
don't know if they'll come back or...
Only talking with the search team?
Right, exactly. Might be a situation where they'll only answer questions that are submitted prior to arrival, and but they've been, again, the 2 women who took over, just recently took over, they really are trying to change it. They understand that there are some challenges to it, and we are hearing that the biggest problem actually isn't on log sport. The biggest problem is the ambulance service has to have an agreement with every hospital
that they
would be doing blood transfers for. So, and I go back to flight just for a second. You look at flight, they could possibly turn and say, well, I need 170 agreements. And so even if they wanted to do that, what are the challenges of that? And so right now the regs say you got to do that, but that is some of the challenges. If you think submitting something to the state can take some time, go submit something to the hospital legal department. They work at the same pace.
Yes, that's where the conversation stemmed from. Okay, anything else? Oh, we don't have a quorum. We're 1 shy.
So we're at 2 hours. I don't know that we're going to get an opportunity to do some other listening tour stuff with Ryan at this point. So we'll probably continue with getting you down here on the 13th of December. So Bill and I will get an invitation out to everybody so that you can come and have an opportunity to interact with Brian and address some of the other issues.
And if people want to still hang out, I think he's here, so it's not
Exactly.
an issue.
I'm happy to stick around for
Yeah.
anyone who wants to and to hear.
Can I have a motion to adjourn? And a second. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.